Okay, well, welcome back everyone. So this is part 8 of our series and the last of our video series where we're learning to make a box for the water piano project using Autodesk Inventor. So in the last video we made our top part here, and in the previous 6 we made our whole box, and so what we're going to do in this one is make an assembly to put the two of them together. So what we're going to do is go to a new, so you can make a new part by either clicking on the new and picking a standard assembly, or you can also go with the shortcut, that little arrow there, and make a new assembly. So an assembly is a little different than a part. It's a different part of the program. We can't make a new sketch. We can't really make new parts. This is a place where we place parts and we put parts together that we've already made. So if you haven't saved your two parts, this is a really important thing because we need to have those two parts on file to actually be able to put them together. Of note, when you move files around, so let's say you save them in your documents and you make an assembly in your documents, and then you take your two parts and you save them onto a flash drive or something like that. And then you edit your assembly, and those parts are now sort of on the flash drive as far as the assembly is concerned. Then you pull your flash drive out and you try to open the assembly again. It's not going to work because it doesn't actually have those parts on file. So it's a good idea to make a folder and put all your parts and assemblies all in the same folder. So what I'm going to do is start with my box part here. I'm going to hit open, just click once, and that pops up. So we can put as many of these parts down as we want. We can just keep clicking, but I don't want that. I just want one. So I'm going to hit escape to get rid of it, or you can just right click as well and hit cancel. So there's our first part. Now it's looking a little bit dull. We don't have any edges around the whole thing, so we're going to change the visibility settings here, and we're going to go shaded with edges. So there's lots of visibility settings you could play with. So you can do things like a wireframe. That would get really confusing with a part like this, but you know, let's say you need to see inside the part. Wireframe is handy sometimes, but let's just keep it on shaded with edges for now. So next we got to place our second part here. This is our top. So open that up, place it down, and escape to get rid of it. Okay, so there's our second part. Now we got this XY plane still going on from our last video, so why don't we get rid of that because we don't need it anymore. So on the little arrow here beside the part, and a little arrow beside our origin, we're going to go down to the colored XY plane, right click, and uncheck the visibility. That gets rid of that. So what we're really doing in this video is learning how to constrain a couple parts together so that they aren't going to move about each other. So right now I can click and drag either of these two parts, and what I kind of want is for one of these to not move. So I don't want the box to move. I want this top to move around it. So what I'm going to do is get the box part, right click, and you're going to go down to a thing here that says grounded. So now this one can still move around. This one you click and drag, it doesn't go anywhere. So it's basically just glued to the floor. So the constraint function, how this one goes, we can constrain edges together, we can constrain faces together, we can constrain a hole into another hole, and it will turn about each other. So let's just show you how this works. If we constrain that face to this face, you get a little boop sound effect sound. And so right now we're on the mate constraint. So what this means is the two sides are gonna just bump up against each other, and we can change this right now. If we do the flush setting, then it orients both parts on the same side. And the constraint, you can see these little arrows coming out. They have now flushed together these two sides here. So now they're always going to be glued together. So I don't actually want that. What I want to do with this constraint is I want to pivot it around the pivot point and see if all of the parts actually fit. So just hit cancel on that one. We don't want that. Our first constraint we're actually going to do is constraining this face. So you got to zoom in a bit to get that crosshair and arrow, otherwise you're just going to get the circle here. So constrain, click that face right there, and we're going to click this face right here. Okay, so now hit apply. So, or actually hit OK, or hit apply and cancel and get rid of that. So now we can just see what's going to go on. So it looks like it can still move around, but if we move closer like this, you can see that those two faces are now mated together. So if we want to move it around a little bit, now it looked like it went off to the side, but it really just went like way off into space in the back there. So we need to add more constraints for this part to actually sit where it needs to. Usually you need to add 3 constraints to something to get it to sit firmly. We're going to add 2 because we want it to pivot. So the last constraint that we got to do is if you click this cylinder here, and it knows you want the center point of the cylinder because, well, that's the logical place for a constraint to be, and we're going to constrain it to that side of the cylinder there, and hit OK. Now, the box doesn't move back and forth. All that it can move, it can only sit flat against that face there, and it can move about that pivot point. So, let's take a look from the front here. What's happening? Hey! Nom, 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 nom. So, you can see that the computer program doesn't really know that there's another, part there. So if you're making an engine and all of your parts start mashing into each other, that wouldn't be a good thing. In more advanced settings, you can take care of that. But in this, all we really want to see is that we made our top to the right size, and that our little fang tabs here are going to lock the whole thing in place. So you can see as it comes down, that little rounded part is going to hit the edge of the front of the box. It will bend a little bit as we go in, and the whole thing will snap shut just like that. So that's basically it. That's a brief introduction into constraining parts using Autodesk Inventor. And, well, that concludes making the whole box.